When did the war on naturally occurring plants start? We are here to defend weeds as forage. Not only are there plenty of very edible options for your livestock out there, they're often superior to the hay, grass, and corn-based feed that we insist they eat. If you think about it, ancient bovines, equines, and all of the other hoof species all ate what was available to them for hundreds of thousands of years, and they were perfectly fine with it. If anything, they were much healthier and more disease-resistant than our modern cattle. It's not because we bred the resistance to disease out of them, not at all. Instead, we just took away their natural medicinal forage and switched it out with carbohydrate-laden feed so that they could gain weight as fast as possible. Will us and animals. Health aside, why wouldn't you consider a natural forage when it supplements your feed costs enormously? You won't just be saving a few cents here and there, you can slash your expenses without even putting in any effort, and your animals will be healthier for it. And it's not like you have to grow a field of native grasses and weeds just to rotate your animals on. Although that's actually a pretty good idea, mind you. The nettles and dandelions are going to spring up with or without your help, and probably outlive other forages. By focusing on what already grows where you live, you can start looking at weeds as food instead of something that needs to be killed. Training livestock, getting them to eat, and even seek out these weeds isn't all that hard either. The problem is that we keep a bale of hay at their disposal at all times. And with all that grass just sitting there in the field, why would they even bother going to look for their own food? That permanent bale is like the bowl of chips in front of you, the kind of thing that you munch on mindlessly. Get them on a feeding schedule. They'll still get all they need from you. And the rest of the day, ruminants want to keep their jaws in constant motion, so inevitably they'll eat what is edible, even if it's not as sweet and convenient as the hay. Force them to look for their feed, and they will. But let's say you want your sheep to feed themselves a natural medicinal weed that they might not seek out on their own. Because even if it's edible and very healthy, a natural anti-parasitic like sweet wormwood is so bitter that the animals avoid it as much as they can. It's a little bit like getting your kid to like mushrooms. You start with a little bit at a time and increase the volume every few days until they build up a tolerance for it, and eventually actually start requesting it themselves. This will be easy if they're on a good schedule. Going off a foul-tasting but very beneficial plant salt like wormwood, start by adding a little to their morning and evening feed, and then increase the amount every few days. Within the year, your cows will eat it, even if they aren't overly fond of it. But by the time they have calves, those babies will be much more willing to eat it in the field. When the third generation comes along, they'll actively seek it out among the grasses and shrubs. This multi-generational approach might sound like a time-consuming task to undertake, but no one knows better how important and rewarding the long game is. Slow and steady does the trick, and just like your orchard, you might not get what you want from it in the first year or two, but eventually there will be more fruits than you know what to do with. If they are on a strict schedule, the animals begin to huddle around the feeding troughs a few minutes before it's time to feed, and they'll bleat and moo and complain if you dare be late. Every now and then, let them go hungry for an hour or two longer than you usually would. They won't starve, but that extra 2 hours of waiting will rile them up so much that when you do arrive, they'll scarf down every morsel you put down for them, without even bothering to stop and taste what they're eating. Cows and goats especially are very dramatic. Use their drama to your advantage. And now, let's have a look at some of the options that are on the table, and why they're so much more well-rounded than standard feed is anyway. Kudzu, the demon vines that are choking out the forest at alarming rates, desperately need more animals mowing them down. Really, you're doing the environment a favor by getting rid of this invasive killer of entire groves. It's closely comparable to alfalfa from a nutritional standpoint, and the high crude protein and carbohydrates in it is very good for all of your livestock. They don't even need to be trained to eat it. All of your farm animals will be happy to graze on it if they're fenced in at a particularly infested part of the forest. So good news for the farmers who live in and around forested areas. Hogs will even dig up the roots, destroying the vines completely and keeping them from coming back. Dandelions. Dandelions grow all over the US. It's one of those weeds that are so pretty when it's in bloom that a few stragglers that come up in your garden are going to be lovely enough that you won't mind too much. They're highly digestible and clock in at 20% protein. It's extremely high in minerals and vitamins, and they are good especially for cows that tend to be a bit more colicky. Even humans use it to treat stomach problems, so why wouldn't the animals? It's also a mild pain reliever, and animals are known to seek it out to treat themselves if they're in pain. Pigeon grass, yellow, green, and wild foxtail, more commonly known as pigeon grass. is a pretty well-known animal fodder. It grows fast and reseeds very well. It's a perfect option for those who practice rotational grazing, since it doesn't need much help to spread and come up again after the goats have left the field. If it's not subjected to regular grazing, you'll have to mow it because it can take over the entire farm in a single season. Really, this stuff grows fast, but as much as it can be plentiful, it still does well growing alongside other plant sorts, so it's a very good addition to your seed mixes along with the other weeds and shrubs. It's highly palpable and comes in at a little over 20% protein. It's not terribly high in vitamins and minerals, but the sheer amount of feed they'll get from it will give your animals a decent amount of calories at the end of the day. Since they'll be eating so much of it, they're bound to get the necessary bulk for their feed. Chicory. Chicory is a bit of a powerhouse weed. It's packed with all of the B vitamins, A, K, C. Oh, just add all the letters of the alphabet in there. Chicory's probably got some of it. Crude protein, carbohydrates, fiber, calcium, magnesium, potassium, manganese, copper. Hold on, let me take a breath. Chicory isn't done packing in the goodies just yet. Antibacterial, antifungal, and antiviral. It is anti-inflammatory and great for digestion. It's something that the bovines will actively seek out for their sensitive digestive tracts. Plus, it's tasty and grows well with other fodder options. And finally, it's probably the best replacement for coffee if you are interested in getting off the caffeine while still getting your morning cup in. Sweet wormwood. As mentioned before, sweet wormwood does not live up to its name. There's nothing sweet about this horribly bitter weed. But it's a great antiparasitic and is used to treat malaria even to this day. It's got antioxidants, a good amount of vitamin C, but most importantly, it's got lots of lysine and protein. Clover. Clover might seem like an obvious choice, since the highly nutritious fodder is often added to bot for feed. But it is more appropriate to call it a weed because it spreads like nobody's business. Low growing and needing zero care from you, there's no reason at all you should be paying for clover. It supports heart and liver function. It's got protein, fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and it's very good for your milking cows or any animal that's just given birth. It works to repair and strengthen the reproductive organs, replace blood loss, and to encourage lactation. Humans have been using clover as a birthing aid for hundreds of years too, so it shouldn't be surprising that the cattle are so fond of it. All of the livestock will seek out clover before they move on to the rest of the field. It's like candy to them. Lamb's quarter. Lamb's quarter is the threat to gardens everywhere, and you've probably been pulling it out automatically when you see it. But it's a high lysine and protein fodder option that, let's face it, is enemy number one for farmers and gardeners all over the world. Edible to animals and humans, it's comparable to hay and alfalfa. Ruminants will eat it if there's nothing else available, but in order to get them to prefer it, they'll need to be trained to like it. Napweed. And now we have another enemy of the field, napweed. It might be worse than lamb's quarters. You see one today, and within the week it's like an invasion on your property, and you can't seem to get rid of it. So let the goats and the hogs have at it. There isn't a lot of nutrition in them, though it is good for digestion and has a little fiber. What's great about napweed is that it is the edible addition that can bulk up feed, and it keeps those ruminant jaws moving. It's not like there will ever not be enough of it growing, so it keeps your livestock constantly snacking, making them happy, and you get to keep it under control. Those were just the invasive and the most nutritious weeds. There are plenty more. Pigweed, thistle, plantains, kacha, cannery grass, smartweed, milkweed, mullein, and the high-protein ragweed. And we aren't even scratching the surface here. You'll have to look at your region, see what grows naturally, and get them in your fields. Most of the weeds will be eaten without your encouragement and training. If it's edible, trust us, they will eat it if it's in the field. And on the rare occasion that you want them to eat something that might not taste as sweet and good as hay or clover, take it slow and increase how much they get every day until it just becomes a staple of them. Not only is it easy to train it into them, it's necessary. Even young calves will seek out the foods that they need when they're sick. It's just written into their DNA to do so. And quite frankly, given how nutritiously dense some of the free and plentiful invaders are, why have we been feeding them so much hay in the first place? Convenience? Or is it because everyone's been doing it for far too long, and we forgot that animals are supposed to eat what grows wild? Whatever the case, feed your herd for less money, but more nutrition and health. Or do you have a few other tricks in your back pocket? Why don't you share those with us in the comments below? The people who are feeding the country need to support each other. There aren't a lot of us out there after all. And like always, leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss any uploads, and love the land. It'll love you back tenfold. Until next time, cheers.